Well, good morning, everyone, or maybe good afternoon or evening, depending where you're joining us from. Welcome here to the Launchpad and our first live launch coverage of 2023. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name's Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad, and here at TLP, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we are glad to have you joining us here today. Right off the bat, something a little bit different on the right side of me. You are looking into a live view of the launcher control room. Launcher is one of today's many customers that are on board the Transporter 6 mission with SpaceX. They will be launching their orbiter craft, which will be carrying a number of payloads into sun synchronous orbit today. This is their maiden flight of the SN1 of the orbiter spacecraft, and we're excited to have this amazing live view into their control room as they count down to launch in just over 15 minutes, and then separation just over an hour and a half after that. We're going to be staying live through all of the deployments of today's spacecraft. 114 payloads on board Falcon 9 here today for the 6th Transporter mission, a dedicated rideshare mission that SpaceX tries to do 2 or 3 of every year. And for 2023, SpaceX is beating all the other countries and going to be the first mission of the year. But we're glad to have you all here with us today. We're going to run through everything we know about today's mission before SpaceX goes live. And of course, we'll be answering your questions. So if you have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we'll work on answering those live throughout the lead up, but also through the coast phase leading up to deployment. If you haven't yet, though, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the broadcast. It really does help us out. Here at TLP, we bring you full live launch coverage of not only SpaceX, but all the launch companies, as well as test streams and mission briefings and news updates are coming back. We've also got a couple new shows that'll be starting up over the next month, and so many more announcements of some projects we've been working on that we can't wait to share with you all. But we're going to dive right into it. We are keeping an eye on SpaceX and making sure that we will patch them in the moment that they do go live. They should be live in the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll listen into SpaceX Mission Control for an update on the status of the rocket. But at this time, propellant load has been going well. Weather is over 90% go for launch, and it looks like it's going to shape up to be a fantastic first launch of 2022. But as we said, today's mission is a Falcon 9 Block 5 rocket, booster 1060, I believe we saw. But we'll wait for SpaceX to confirm that. Launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Great to see so many of you joining us here this morning. We got Joe Pilot in Vancouver. We got Suzanne in Florida, great to see you. If you haven't yet, take a moment, let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We know we got people all over the world. It's great to have you here. Nacho's in California. Tristan's in New Zealand. Great to have you this morning. We've got Brazil, we've got Texas. Great to have you all here. If you are in Florida and you have clear skies, definitely something in about 10 minutes to head on outside to see if you can have a view of the first launch of 2022, launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Deployment's going to take a little bit of time today. There's 114 on board. The first deployment is expected to begin here after a little bit of time, kind of similar to what we've been seeing for the last few launches, about 58 minutes into flight. But after that, it is every few seconds we have a deployment all the way up to that 1 hour, 31 minute mark. Some of these deployments are going to be a singular CubeSat or two, and then other times we're going to see like the launcher orbiter separate, which will actually carry a number of payloads into orbit. The launcher payload spacecraft is compatible not only with Falcon 9, but the PSLV, the Terran, SSLV, the Vega Alpha, and Launcher Lite. So they are a vehicle that can be used in the future by many different providers. So far, they have at least 4 missions confirmed with SpaceX. Their next one won't be until quarter 2 of 2023, also going into a sun synchronous orbit. They have another one in Q3 2023 and then one in Q1 2024 scheduled, and all 3 of those still have bookings available, so they are still accepting people onto those payloads for future missions. If you're just joining us, though, welcome here to the launch pad. On the right side of my screen here, you're looking at a live view inside the launcher control room, one of today's customers with SpaceX, set for their maiden flight of their orbiter spacecraft. SpaceX will be getting underway here in just a couple of minutes, but we're taking some time to answer your questions. So if you have those, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll be working on answering those to the best of our ability over the next few minutes here. If you want to know more about today's mission, you can always head on over to tlpnetwork.com and check out our mission briefing for today. We're excited to be rolling out a really big update to those in the next couple of weeks, so make sure you're staying tuned for that. And if you want to know when the next launch is coming up, you can use our TLP launch control. That's on tlpnetwork.com/launches. That's where you can find out about all the launches, whether we'll be live for them or not, or if there'll be live streams available, along with dedicated mission briefings for every mission. And when I say we're excited for this update, there is so much information that is going to be coming out with this. We've got engine data, rocket data, we've got agency data, so much coming out over the next couple of months that our team's been working on. We can't wait to finally get to share that with you all. But if you're interested in possibly joining the TLP team, that is something you can do. We are still looking for writers and contributors to join our team to help inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow. And you can apply to join our team as a moderator, contributor, writer, or rocket chaser if you live near a space launch site or test facility by going to the link that's going to be in the chat, and you can fill out one of our applications. We're always reviewing those and looking at who would be the best fit to join our team. We got Susan in Florida. Great to see you. TJ's in Florida as well. Rachel's in Florida. Lots of Florida tuning in. It's great to have you all here with us this morning. Of course, it is the first stream of 2023, and just from the entire TLP crew, thank you so much for an incredible 2022. It was a year full of many adventures and memories and incredible opportunities that we can't imagine what 2023 has in store. We're excited to take you along the way. We've been working on a lot of back projects in 2022 that are finally going to be ready to come to light and get used and start streaming, and we can't wait to share those with you and just continue this journey into space. I see a question: is the plaque mounted yet? Not yet, and the reason is I am redoing the entire studio this week. So, in 2 to 3 weeks-ish, we will do a studio tour for our members. So if you want to do that, click the join button or join us over on Patreon, and you'll be able to have a look into there. SpaceX is getting underway with their live stream, so of course we're going to patch them in and listen into SpaceX Mission Control as we continue to count down towards liftoff here today. Throughout today's stream, if you have questions, you can continue to send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those through the stream. But of course, we'll be listening in to updates from Mission Control. Going to take about an hour and a half for full deployment, and today's booster will be landing at Landing Zone 1. So it is a return to landing site to kick off the year. We saw a number of those last year, and excited to see even more of those this year. Last year, SpaceX set a record 61 missions, 60 Falcon 9, 1 Falcon Heavy, and we have heard this year they are planning 105 missions are their target. We'll wait to see if they can break that 100 number. That is, on average, one launch every 3 days. So you're going to see a lot of me, and we're going to see a lot of you, and we're excited to have this busy year with SpaceX, but also with so many other vehicles coming online. We're probably going to see New Glenn fly. We're probably going to see Vulcan fly. Will we see the return of New Shepard and Virgin Galactic with their spaceship 2 or 3. Lots of other vehicles looking at coming online with ABL. We're going to see updates on Neutron. It is going to be a very busy year, and we're going to be bringing it to you all live right here on the Launchpad. We're going to have new live shows, new recorded videos, and a whole lot more starting up over the next couple of weeks. Now, as we get down to just over 7 minutes and counting, we're going to listen in to SpaceX Mission Control as we count down to the first launch of 2022, launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Let's listen in to SpaceX Mission Control.
You are looking at a live view of Falcon 9 set to lift off at 9:56 a.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Shiva, and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX, and I'm joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Today, we are launching SpaceX's Transporter 6 mission, and as the name suggests, it's our sixth dedicated small sat rideshare program launch. This mission will mark our first launch of 2023 and our 200th mission of all time. Now, on this flight are 114 spacecraft, including CubeSats, picosats, microsats, and orbital transfer vehicles carrying spacecraft to be deployed at a later time. We'll have a total of 82 deployment events, which will begin around the T+58 minute mark, and they'll last for approximately 30 minutes. Now, we are expecting to lose ground station coverage partway through the deployment sequence, so only some of the deployments will be visible today. However, when we're back in range of those ground stations, we do expect to have telemetry and hear audio confirmation over the nets. Now, if you'd like to see a full list of today's payload deployments, head over to SpaceX.com. With liftoff just about 6 minutes and 20 seconds away from now, let's take a moment to learn more about the Falcon 9 that's on your screen. Now, to give you a sense of scale, this Falcon 9 rocket is standing about 3 meters short of the height of the Taj Mahal in India. It was named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, and it gets that 9 number from the number of Merlin 1D engines that are at the base of the rocket.
Stage 1 fuel load is complete.
What you see on your screen are the 4 key parts that make up the rocket. We've got the first and second stages, the black inner stage in between them, and then at the very top, the payload fairing. The first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle. We refer to it as the booster, and it's got those 9 Merlin engines that do most of the work to get it off the ground and into the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. About 2.5 minutes into the flight, the first stage will separate and make its way back to Earth for a land landing at landing zone 1, which is on your screen. If you're keeping track, today's mission marks the 15th flight for this particular booster. Now, on top of the first stage, we've got that black carbon fiber inner stage. It connects the 2 stages, houses the pneumatic pushers that allow the first and second stage to separate during flight, and also houses the Merlin vacuum engine during ascent. On top of the inner stage, we've got the second stage, which is what's carrying the 114 spacecraft and will take them to their eventual destination in orbit. Shortly after launch, be sure to watch
tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
Be sure to watch the velocity gauges that'll show up on your screen. You'll see how fast the first stage and second stages are going at separation, and you'll notice that the second stage continues to increase in velocity as we get to orbit. Now, the spacecraft are enclosed in the very top of the rocket in that large nose cone structure, which is called a fairing. Its job is to protect the satellites from the aerodynamic loads until we are out of the Earth's atmosphere, at which point the fairing will separate and expose them to the vacuum of space. You heard some callouts on the net there that we've begun pressurizing the tanks and begun pulling away the strongback. The strongback refers to that truss structure to the left of the vehicle, and we are just about T-4 minutes to go until launch. Currently healthy on the vehicle and the payloads. Propellant loading is almost fully complete on the first and second stages. We've completely loaded fuel on both the first and second stages and are finishing up liquid oxygen loading on both stages. We'll hear a call out around the T-3 minute mark for LOX load complete on the first stage, and a similar call out on the second stage around the T-2 minute mark. Looks like an absolutely beautiful day in Florida. Based on the weather report, we're only tracking a 10% probability of violation. So that means that we are a 90% chance of go weather. But for whatever reason, if we were not to launch today, we do have another opportunity tomorrow at the same time.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
So with that call out, liquid oxygen loading is complete on the first stage. We'll hear a similar call out on the second stage. Now, our goal with these missions is to provide small satellite operators competitive pricing, increased flight opportunities, and flexibility. We're flying some really cool payloads on this mission, including spacecraft design to help monitor weather and environmental changes, as well as greenhouse gas emissions, spacecraft that improve communications for the Internet of Things, and those that also help measure and investigate galactic cosmic rays and solar rays. It's incredible how even the smallest satellites can make a meaningful contribution to the care of planet Earth and our efforts to visit other worlds. We are looking forward to providing a great ride to the 114 payloads on board today, just about 2 minutes from now. Next major milestone will be a call out for second stage LOX load complete. Once we hear that, we will be fully loaded on propellants for the launch attempt in about 2 minutes.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now at less than 2 minutes and counting until the first launch of 2023. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, and invite people to join us for the launch of SpaceX Transporter 6, carrying 114 payloads into a sun-synchronous orbit, launching from Slick 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in just over 90 seconds. Listen back into mission control and listen for the launch director's final go for launch.
With the moist Florida air and produces literal clouds around the vehicle. Coming up, next major milestone will be Falcon 9's transition into startup. That means that the flight computers on board the first and second stage will have taken over the launch countdown, and they'll continue to have control of the vehicle through the rest of the mission. Next major milestone will be the launch director giving their final go for launch.
Go for launch.
And with that call, all systems go for launch. Let's watch as this Falcon 9 takes the Transporter 6 mission to orbit.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff.
Good rolls pitching downrange.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
And with that, a new calendar year has begun,
Just
a new
about 40
record-breaking season of launches underway with the first launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, carrying 114 satellites into sun-synchronous orbit, coming up to T plus 1 minute into flight. Next major event is going to be Max Q. Lots of camera there, but on the right side of your screen, that is a live look at the live telemetry and trajectory of the Falcon 9 as it begins its journey to orbit.
That's cute.
With that, we are through the highest stresses on the vehicle. Coming up, we've got several events back to back. The first of those is main engine cutoff, or MECO. There will shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines in preparation for stage separation. Stage separation is where pneumatic pushers will separate the first and second stages. And then we'll have second engine start number 1. We just heard a call out for MVAC chill-in, so we've begun chilling in the turbopumps in preparation to start the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. While the second stage engine is burning, the first stage will be performing a flip maneuver, and then it will do a boost back burn. That boost back burn will ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines to make the first stage's way back towards land, since we are attempting a land landing today with this first stage. So again, those events back to back: MECO, stage separation, first stage flip, second engine start number 1, and then the boost back burn.
Stage 1 shutdown.
Stage separation confirmed.
Invac ignition.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
So there is those 5 events. Awesome shots from the ground. You can see the first stage boosting away. That was on the left part of your screen, and the second stage continuing to burn. Now this burn on the first stage will last about 47 seconds. And the second stage is going to continue burning for a while. It will complete its burn until the T+8 minutes and 20 or so second mark. Shortly after the boost back burn ends, the next major milestone will be fairing separation. You'll see that on the right-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
So there is successful shutdown of the boost back burn. You're seeing some pulses there from the ground from our attitude control system. We use nitrogen gas as our attitude control medium, and it helps us keep pointed in the correct direction. Here you can see the bursts firing on the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen.
On the far right side of your screen, you can now see, and there's fairing separation, 114 satellites now exposed to space. Some of them are single payloads, some of them are grouped together on the launcher and some other companies' spacecrafts that will deploy them later, and they'll see a larger deployment of that larger spacecraft. But on the right side of your screen, now tracking 2 objects, the first stage booster as it begins its journey back down to landing zone 1, and the second stage as it continues its journey into orbit there, so you can keep an eye on those 2 flights. Going into a sun-synchronous polar orbit, launching to the south here today, so we'll be keeping a live look at that. Next major event is going to be the entry burn of that first stage, but booster 1060 now having completed its 15th launch in its history, pairing up to be a flight-leading booster again, and now going to attempt its 15th recovery back to landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Let's listen back into SpaceX Mission Control.
Slow down the first stage before hitting the densest parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
Without that burn, we'd be only using the atmosphere to slow down the Falcon 9, and that puts a lot of extra stresses on the rocket. So we ignite 3 of those Merlin 1D engines to slow down as we hit the thickest parts of the Earth's atmosphere. We had an on-time liftoff, 9:56 a.m. Eastern Time, from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. And we're carrying the Transporter 6 mission on the second stage right now. It's SpaceX's 6th dedicated smallsat rideshare program and our first mission of 2023. We're targeting at least 3 dedicated rideshare flights, 2 sun-synchronous orbit per year. We also offer opportunities to ride to orbit on our Starlink missions, which launch about once a week. Now, these small sats can ride to space on our Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and the Starship vehicle in the not-too-distant future. You can see that the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. We've got 4 of these hypersonic grid fins near the top of the stage. And once we get into the thicker parts of the atmosphere, it's only the grid fins that do the steering. To make our way back to landing zone 1, you can actually see the Space Coast of Florida there on the left-hand side of the screen. Next major event coming up in about 15 seconds. That's the first stage's entry burn, where we'll ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Now keep an eye on the speed of the first stage in the lower left corner of your screen. You'll see that
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
drop off dramatically as the entry burn is slowing us down. Pretty quick burn. This one will last about 20 or so seconds.
Nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And there is successful shutdown of those Merlin engines. Now, as we are slowing down, re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, if you're in the Florida area, you may hear some sonic booms.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
We are attempting to recover this booster for the 15th time today, targeting this landing at landing zone 1. We've got just one more burn, which is the landing burn on the first stage. We'll ignite just a single center Merlin engine. That'll happen just before touchdown.
Stage 1 transonic.
On the right-hand side of your screen, we've got a ground view of stage 1. You can see the center engine
Stage
has
1
ignited.
landing burn.
We'll expect to see the 4
Stage
landing
2
legs
terminal
deployed
guidance.
for a soft touchdown at landing zone 1. Now, during this, we'll also hear a call out of second engine cutoff on the second stage.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Seco.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
So landing is complete. We also heard a call out there for Seco.
Nominal parking orbit.
Seco is second engine cutoff number 1. We just heard a call out as well for nominal parking orbit. And with that, we have landed the Falcon 9. It's our 161st landing of an orbital class rocket. This booster's 15th. Now coming up, our next major event will be in about 45 minutes. That is for second engine start number 2. And that'll be followed shortly by payload deploy of the first 35 payload deployment events. So we're gonna leave you with views from space, and we'll see you back shortly for second engine start number 2.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. We have just seen the first launch of 2023 be a success. Booster 1060-15 mission complete. Its 15th launch and landing. We are now counting down 48 minutes until the first deployment. First deployment is going to be at the Kuwait Sat-1, beginning the deployment of 114 satellites on board today's mission. So don't head anywhere. We got lots more still coming up with today's mission, with the first launch of 2023. And this is the time we're going to be answering your questions about everything space, about today's mission. So you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we will work on answering those live. I will point out again, just above me, and we'll bring it up on the larger screen here, we do have this incredible view into the launcher control room. Launcher is one of the payloads on board today's mission, and we are looking into a live view over their team as they count down towards their orbiter deployment, expected at 11:22 a.m. Eastern Time. This is their first ever launch of their orbiter spacecraft on the first of 4 missions already confirmed with SpaceX. So their team very excited for today's mission, watching closely, monitoring the status of their vehicle as they count down towards their deployment. Their deployment will be the 6th last one we see today, with deployment expected 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 11 seconds into flight. The next major event that we're going to be watching out for, as he said, coming up in about 40 minutes or so, is SES-2. That is going to be the second burn of the second stage, just to finalize its orbit. As you can see, it has performed a dogleg maneuver, having launched from Florida, now having passed over already Central America, and heading into this orbit. An orbit very similar to what we would have actually seen if it had launched from Vandenberg, but they are now able to launch vehicles in this direction from Florida. We're going to take time to answer those questions, so you can keep sending those in the chat. But another great start to the year, beginning a year of 105 Falcon 9 launches planned, and Falcon Heavy launches. We're hoping to see up to 5 Falcon Heavy launches this year. And let us know in the chat, will this be the year that you think we see a Starship orbital flight test? I think our team's feeling pretty good that we will see that this year as well. So it's going to be a very historic year for SpaceX, pushing their numbers to an all-new record of triple digits, but also bringing a new vehicle partially online. Corner is asking any updates on Terran 1 or Vulcan dates. We do not have dates for those vehicles as of yet. Terran 1 is very soon, as it is out on the pad and they are preparing that vehicle for launch. Vulcan, that is something we're going to see probably getting into maybe Q2. Q3 of 2023. We have to wait and see. We do know they're preparing for that. I would say Q2 at the earliest that we would see that fly. And then a big question as well, New Glenn. New Glenn is a lot further along, most people think, than we think. Than like the general population thinks. Blue Origin's been advertising it a lot, so we think we might see New Glenn roll out for the first time here in maybe Q1 or 2. We know their teams are preparing for that flight as well. So 2023 definitely going to be the year of new launch vehicles. There's at least 5 possibly coming online, if not more. There's going to be some new sounding rockets and different things as well. We're going to see new launch sites come online with the first launch out of the UK from Spaceport Cornwall. So it'll be another very record-setting year here coming up. And of course, you can catch that all live right here on the launch pad as we bring you full live launch coverage, space briefing, space news update, and exclusive one-on-one interviews. Justin, did it look like there was some trouble during the boost back engine restart? I don't think there was anything. Sometimes there can be some ice buildup and stuff, and just the angle of the camera can look like it kind of is puffing, but it looked pretty clean from what I can tell there. So we'll wait and see what happens there. And there's Jay in the chat, part of our team. Vulcan's tentatively February 25th from what they've seen. So definitely sounds like that's what they're going for. That's why I'm hesitant to say Q1, because if they're saying end of February, probably going to slip a little bit. Big thing is also just range availability. With SpaceX launching over 100 missions this year, one every 3 days. They do have 3 sites, Kennedy, Cape, and Vandenberg. But with that means they're going to be having a rocket basically always at the pad in a way. So if you're traveling to Florida, it's a really great chance that you're going to see a launch this year. Stay at least 4 or 5 days. You should be almost guaranteed to see at least one launch from the Space Coast, which is a really awesome opportunity to have, being able to see flights this year. Yeah, we know how launch dates go. Absolutely. If anything from last year, we learned that launch dates can slip. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see periods like we did last year where we didn't have a Starlink for 2 months. We had a number of customer missions. So SpaceX has a lot of customers coming online with vehicles as well. We see them. They got a couple more OneWeb missions and some other payloads as well there. So it is something that, there's still a lot of Starlinks coming up, and we'll cover those as well. We're working on getting our rocket chaser set up with our own live cameras down on site, so we'll be able to bring you full coverage through propellant loading and that go, no go, so about 30-40 minutes to launch. We're hoping to get that online in the next few weeks, next couple of months, few weeks here. So we're just waiting for some final equipment and access here. If you want to know about some of the incredible missions that are coming up over the next year, and you want to follow along, see which ones are going, you can head on over to tlpnetwork.com in our news section. We put out an article yesterday, 15 launches that you can't miss. We'll drop the link in the chat here. These are 15 missions that are coming up this year, and this is scratching the surface. This could have been a document of like 40 launches this year that you didn't want to miss. There are so many science missions with NASA, new launch vehicles coming online, record-breaking missions, new crew missions. Excuse me. It is going to be a really incredible year for space exploration, all laying the foundation for us to be ready to go back to the moon next year, maybe with a crew, easing into 2025. We'll see how Artemis 2 goes. But they are pushing for that Artemis 2 mission hopefully being at the very end of next year. So it's going to be a very busy time in space exploration. If you're just joining us, though, welcome here to the launch pad. We are now 17 minutes into today's flight. We are counting down until payload deployment of 114 satellites on board the second stage of today's SpaceX rocket for the Transporter 6 mission. SpaceX does these dedicated rideshare missions 2 to 3 times a year, and this year they were the first off the bat with the first launch of 2023, launching from California. Above me is a live view into the launcher mission control room. This is one of the payloads on board from one of the customers waiting to deploy their orbiter spacecraft. They'll be the 6th last deployment of today's sequence. Some deployments will just be singular CubeSats. Other ones will be like the orbiter spacecraft, which have a number of customers on their own spacecraft. And then they will be responsible for those deployments at a later time. Many are referring to these launches like the clown car of rockets. Really neat thing with the orbiter spacecraft, and we're going to do a video, an article diving into launcher and their orbiter craft. The orbiter spacecraft is able to do an altitude change, plane change, in-plane phasing, and even inclination changing. For today's mission, they are promising a sun-synchronous orbit plus or minus 3 degrees with an altitude variation of 200 to 1,200 kilometers in orbit. It can be for cube or small satellites. As I said, this is their first of 4 missions. Their next mission with SpaceX will be on Q2 of 2023, Q4 of 2023, and then Q1 of 2024. All of those are, the next 2 will be sun-synchronous orbit, and then there'll be another one at a different orbit at 53 degrees. All of them are generally plus or minus 3 degrees, promising 200 to 1,200 kilometer in altitude deployment opportunities, and they do not have SN2 listed, so we're waiting to hear who will be flying that SN2 spacecraft. But another provider coming online with a new payload opportunity with their satellite transfer vehicle and platform, and I'm sure their teams are eagerly awaiting deployment of their first spacecraft. Lucian, when do we transport the goods on Mars? We've got some time to get there. We got to get Starship working first, and then we will start sending payloads of Starships full of supplies ahead of sending people. So we'll see a number of convoys of ships, especially when that Martian transfer window opens. You will see a number of Starships all go together heading towards Mars, which I think is going to be a really exciting time because you're going to see, imagine seeing like 10 or 15 Falcon 9s launch in like a month, and then they all stay in orbit and the second stage waits so they can all burn and go to Mars at once. So that's what we're going to see with basically Starship. We're going to get a bunch of them in orbit, and then in a short period of time during that launch window and transfer window, they will all begin their burn. So you're going to have this train of Starships heading towards Mars. They'll obviously have some space there because they'll need to be able to get in orbit and then land, and they'll want them close together. But it's going to be a really neat thing that we've never seen before, and we'll be hopefully seeing that in the next few years. We'll hopefully see a test flight maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, depending on when we can get into another Martian window that actually works. Now, just because we're not in the perfect Mars transfer window does not mean we can't launch a mission to Mars. You can launch a mission to Mars almost any time. There's a small period that you can't, but it's for when is the fastest and most fuel efficient that you can do. Obviously, the more fuel efficient, the more less fuel you need, the more payload that you can take. But if it's a test flight and we're only sending 1 or 2, maybe not as big of a deal. A lot of these test flights will have payload on board of them that will eventually be there to be able to be used, but will not be actual missions to, stock the planet. It'll be, let's fill it with stuff that we might eventually need just because we can, and send it because they don't want to waste those missions. It's a good question there. TJ, did they have to make any trajectory adjustments with this flight path? And so they did a dogleg maneuver, which is when they launch one way and then they kind of bend around during flight. That's because they do need to avoid Florida until they're at a certain altitude. So they kind of arc around the state, and then they go right over top of Cuba and Central America. But that's something that once they are crossing those areas, they're at a high enough altitude that it isn't a concern to people below. John, why do you think Dragon can't replace the Soyuz as a rescue pod for the ISS? It can. NASA is in talks with SpaceX right now about using a Dragon as a vehicle for replacing Soyuz. Two major restrictions would be, one, spacesuits. SpaceX uses a custom spacesuit. They make spacesuits for every single astronaut. They train in previous people's suits, but when they fly, they have their own suit made exactly to their centimeter to be perfectly to their body. Same thing with the chairs. The chairs have adjustments to them, so they are designed specifically for them. That's the first issue. We do not have suits for the 2 Russians and 1 American on station that need to come home. The second issue, which there's a way around it, but it wouldn't be good. If we talk about Dragon taking over and not a Soyuz, this is almost Dragon operating in an emergency rescue scenario. Because we have 4 people on station right now with 1 Dragon. We launch another Dragon, which could hold up to 4 people. We can't do that because we need to bring 3 people home, which means that Dragon either has to launch with 1 person, or it has to launch empty, which it can do. It could launch empty, dock itself, and those 3 people could come home on it. The thing is, none of those people are trained on Dragon. They were trained on Soyuz for years. So what would happen most likely is you see the 4 that are currently on station. I would expect that we would see the pilot of that crew and one of the other 2 astronauts become the new commander and pilot of the empty Dragon. 2 people, maybe say the 2 Russians, would go home with the original crew on Dragon that's attached right now, and then 1 would come home on the other one. But now you're talking about impacting the stay of the current crew on station because of how long they're staying. So there's a lot of playing that we have to do, and that's if you can get spacesuits and get a Dragon ready. We don't know if there's a crew Dragon available when the next one will be, because the next one was most likely supposed to launch Polaris Dawn. So now if you take Polaris Dawn's vehicle for an emergency, which is doable, obviously we need to take care of people that are in orbit first, what's that going to do to their mission, which is a customer of SpaceX in many ways? So then you're impacting that. Russia's looking at launching a Soyuz. They are preparing a vehicle as well, but it's still going to be a number of weeks till it's ready. That vehicle was meant for the next Russian crew in a couple months. So they can't send a crew on it. Basically, any vehicle that goes has to be empty. So if they launch this next capsule empty, which they can do, dock it to station, those 3 people can come home on it, but they weren't able to launch 3 more people, which means we are now down to a crew of only 4 on station because of Dragon, which means that crew of 4 has to stay on station until the next SpaceX crew arrives, because we can't leave the station empty. We're not going to do that after not doing that for 20 years. So then you're affecting that schedule. Let's say they launch another Soyuz, dock it to station, and they have the crew on 3. Russia is now considering and talking with NASA, do the 2 cosmonauts and 1 NASA astronaut stay for an additional 6 months to when that new capsule was supposed to originally come home, and have like a year-long mission instead of a 6-month mission. They could do that. We know people can stay on station for 6 months. Obviously an impact to those people and their families, and now you've got 3 astronauts or cosmonauts on the ground that were supposed to go. So no matter what happens, this is going to impact the entire future schedule of the ISS, future crew rotations, possibly even other crewed missions with Dragon. So that is why they are not rushing to a decision. The space station is safe. They have the vehicle there if they need it. They just don't trust it. But at this point, it is something that they're looking at all options. But there's a lot happening right now with figuring out what the next best steps will be for that Soyuz crew, and we'll be keeping a close eye on those situations, and we'll bring you updates as we can. Catching up on your chat. Awesome, TJ. Appreciate it. It's a big question. Jay, yeah, I'd hate to be the person in charge of ISS scheduling right now. It's a mess. because you've also got visiting crews. AX2 is supposed to have a mission this year. That's going to throw that all out of whack. You've got all the cargo crafts that have to dock. There's a lot happening on ISS. We're most likely seeing the entire future scheduling of ISS shift with this, because it almost sounds inevitable that one less crew will be required in the schedule, or we're going to have a short visit of a crew, something. So we'll have to wait to see. Could Falcon lift Soyuz? No, it would not be able to. That's how would you do? That's making a circle thing. That's making a square fit in a circle hole. Now, not saying NASA hasn't done that before, but not in this situation. Need a parking deck for the station. They've got an open port, so they could dock a Soyuz. They have an open port for a Dragon, so they're okay with docking ports right now, but it is still something. And then, then the question is, you have a Soyuz dock there that you can't use. Are you going to try to make repairs to it in the future, or are we just separating it and trashing it? Because if they're just going to trash it, they have two options. They could just trash it, burn it up in the atmosphere, and splash it into the ocean, or they could theoretically bring it home. I don't know if it's fully automated, though. I'd have to actually read into that. Jay, do you know? Can Soyuz come home empty? Without people? Could it deploy chutes? Asking our team here. FMC, great question there. What's the schedule for Boeing Starliner? We'll see. They have their crew's training and ready. We should see that flight this year. It is on our schedule that we will see the crewed flight test of Starliner, but with all these impacts to the ISS schedule, things like that will likely be impacted. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But that is definitely one of the missions that we are looking forward to for this year, is the crewed flight test of the Boeing Starliner craft, which would bring a second American capsule online, which would be another great opportunity if we needed a replacement craft right now to possibly be able to do that. I guess theoretically Starliner, if it were ready now, could go as a vehicle up, but it would be very odd to see that happen due to it being a test flight still, a crew test flight. If it had finished its crew test flight last year, we could have seen Starliner being a consideration for the situation now on board, but not at this time. April for Starliner, very to be determined now, though. Yeah, it's got an April placeholder, but especially with all the things on station right now, I that will slip, definitely. And we have Dream Chaser, absolutely, Corner. I'm really, personally, I'm more excited to see Dream Chaser launched than Starliner. I love the Dream Chaser vehicle, have since it was announced. Hoping to be down there for that launch or its return. But excited to see kind of a mini shuttle come online, which will be really great. It is true. It is waiting for a Vulcan, though, Asher. We are waiting for some Vulcans. Yeah, 2023 shuttle. Let's see. I have a feeling they could do that. If Vulcan 1 goes well, I think we could see another Vulcan this year if we can get the first Vulcan off the ground soon. If you're just joining us, though, welcome here to the launch pad. We're now just over 30 minutes into today's mission. Payload deployments expected to begin in just over 27 minutes from now. We do have a final burn of the second stage. It's going to be a quick 2-second burn to finalize its orbit. That burn is expected to occur about 24 minutes from now, and then we will be set up to begin the deployment of 114 satellites on board today. Above me here, you can see a live view of the launcher mission control room. This is one of the customers on board today's mission who have their first spacecraft, their orbiter spacecraft, on board, which is a orbital launch vehicle. So they can have CubeSats or small satellites on board the orbiter, which is on board Falcon. So once orbiter separates, it acts almost like a third stage, and it can maneuver around, adjust its altitude, inclination, and everything, and deploy their own customers. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost like a kick stage of Rocket Lab in many ways. The orbiter craft, smaller in relation to the whole vehicle. Kick stage is quite large compared to Electron. But great to see another orbital kind of space vehicle come online to help open up more opportunities on missions like this. Shattered, it's entirely possible that the Soyuz will return home with its crew on schedule. They will not be bringing crew home on that, from what it sounds like. They don't trust that there isn't more damage that they haven't seen, and they don't seem to want to say it was a micrometeorite that hit the cable. It took the hose of the coolant and leaked all the coolant. So one, they would have to get new coolant into the craft, which they could do through the station. Station has coolant. But there's concerns on just the integrity of that craft, and without doing full spacewalks and inspections and everything, that's highly unlikely they'll risk a crew on that, especially with an American on board. Because not only does Russia, with their Russian cosmonauts, have to say yes, NASA has to say yes because there's an American on board. So we'll have to see. Quarter, they could probably finalize a waiver or something. It's maybe. TJ, Dream Chaser is launching on Falcon 9. Dream Chaser is launching on Vulcan Centaur, the new ULA rocket. That is what it will, at this time, launch on. Yeah, Falcon 9 can't fly it currently due to fairing restrictions, just because of the size of the fairing needed. Theoretically, could they make a custom fairing and you see a Falcon 9 that like bulges out in the fairing? I mean, you could probably, play some Kerbal kind of method on it, but yeah, no. Dream Chaser will fly on Vulcan. That's what it was intended for. I do not know how to say your name, and I apologize for that. But Il Sato Pagetto? I'm sorry. Here's a stupid question. No such thing. That's why we're here. We love answering your guys' question. Can we use Starship to catch space debris and bring them home? In theory, yes. There's a lot of things that have to happen to that. It's not just a hungry hippo thing where it can eat and then just come home. Anything that goes in Starship has to be secured. So you have to have a way of securing payload in Starship for when it comes home, it re-enters, belly flops, throws it around. You can't have anything loose. It'd be like putting a Tic Tac in a water bottle. Like, sure, the water bottle can go over and eat the Tic Tac, but then start moving the water bottle around and the thing bounces everywhere. You can't do that in a spacecraft. So theoretically, yes, if we can find a way to secure whatever it's eating. So definitely long run, that's something things are looking at. I think what's more likely we're seeing with some startup companies that are proposing crafts that will launch on things like even Transporter 6 could have, is these small vehicles, kind of like Orbiter in a way, that will launch, be deployed near where garbage is, and then they will come, because let's say you have a piece of garbage, you really only need to have a small engine come up, get in front of it, and then slow it down. You don't even have to slow it down all the way to re-enter it. You just have to slow it down enough to put it on a planned re-entry for it to come back into Earth. And then that craft could separate and actually go do something else. Or they could be one-off. So there's a few opportunities on how to clean up some of space. But keep in mind, there's debris up there that is the size of your fingernail. Shavings off of old things, small nuts and bolts that are flying around from old satellites. So there's a lot of debris that just eventually can't be cleaned up at this point. But larger debris, absolutely. Justin, magnets? Yeah, unfortunately they wouldn't be strong enough for this. You would have to have, almost in a way, a crew that spacewalks. Or you'd have to have some really skilled robotic arms on board, which I know a country that's pretty good at that, Canada. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, 114 payloads on board here today. And yes, sending into the sun, though sounds like a really great idea to send our garbage into the sun. Really expensive to do, and really hard to do too. Takes a lot of fuel to be able to do that. So not something that ultimately would be done. Brian, flying rockets that grab spacecraft, that would be possible as well. The question is then who's paying the bill, because you're not going to see a private company necessarily just launch rockets to clean up space because it's for the good of space. We don't do that on Earth. We're not going to do that in orbit. There are new laws that have been passed here in the United States, and they're looking at being passed around the world, that new satellites that have end of lives do have to have a deorbit strategy within 5 years of retirement. So we're no longer allowing people just to have a satellite die and stay in orbit and naturally come down eventually. It does have to have a deorbit plan within 5 years. Excuse me. So we need a space vacuum dust master. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the nice thing with doing re-entry and just burning up in the atmosphere is you don't, like, let's say it's going, for simplified, let's say it's going 100 miles an hour. And that's keeping it in orbit. If you can slow it down just to 90 miles an hour, that orbit's going to start to decay. And it still might take a lot of orbits for it to come back, but it's going to slowly start to decay. Gravity will slowly pull it in. Same reason why Hubble is lowering, because Earth is slowly pulling it in. That's why we're looking at a reboost mission. That is because it isn't having an engine keep it in a constant orbit. So if there's debris that's in a more stable orbit like Hubble, and we just get in front of it and we slow it down just a tiny bit, that's going to start to decay that orbit. If you slow it down a lot, you can do what SpaceX does with their second stage. They'll deploy everything, they turn it around, they fire the engine, and they fire it until they know their payload, their second stage, is going to come down in a dedicated spot in the ocean. So they can do that. We could do that with debris. Now, or we could just say, let's bring it, if it's small enough and you know it's just going to burn up in the atmosphere, slow it down ever so slightly, then it comes and just eventually burns up by itself. So you don't necessarily have to bring stuff home for it. Most of the debris in orbit, we don't need to bring home. No worries, Chief. They're still monitoring. We won't probably have an update for a couple of weeks on what's happening on the ISS, but they are looking into a number of options, one with Soyuz and one with Crew Dragon. We'll work on doing an update article maybe this week on where we stand on that and some of the upcoming opportunities that are being reviewed. The ISS itself is something that is approaching the end of its life, 7 more years. 2030 is when it will be retired. But I think, like Jay said, talking about boosting, Jay has to do frequent boosts and avoidance maneuvers all the time now. But it has to boost the ISS quite frequently to keep it in a stable orbit. We've actually seen them delay a crew launch because they had to boost the station. Or they'll boost the station ahead of a crew's arrival. But if you're just joining us, welcome here. We're counting down now just over 17 minutes until payload deployments begin on today's Transporter 6 mission, the first launch and mission of 2023. Still getting used to saying that. We are now 41 minutes into today's mission. Falcon 9 booster 1060 successfully launched and landed after its 15th mission. And the second stage is now getting warmed up and prepared in 14 minutes to conduct a 2-second burn to finalize its orbit ahead of beginning payload deployments over the next little bit of time. And we're actually just looking into Because we were all talking about Terran earlier. Or Terran 1, excuse me. Terran 1. Because the Terran 1 was not visible at the pad on SpaceX's stream here. I'm going to rewind the stream because I didn't see that live. So bear with me here as I'm reviewing this. You can keep sending in your questions in the chat, and we'll work on answering those live over the next little bit of time here as we count down towards payload deployment in just over 15 minutes from now. We will listen into SpaceX Mission Control here as well. Marcus, you are down on site there. Can you take a look and see if the Terran rocket is on the pad? Because no one saw it. No one saw it roll back, and it's not at the pad now. So I guess they snuck it back in some night. Still at home. Unacceptable. Asher, likely in the hangar for last checks. Makes sense. It's just funny because so much about them rolling it out and then no one noticed that it's gone. You know, everyone's been watching it, but it just disappeared in the night. Fjord's asking, are those satellites Albanian 1 and 2? Let me go through the list of today's. There's a lot of these are in blocks. So there's like 36 blocks that don't have a name. Okay, I do have Albania 1 will deploy 1 hour 20 minutes into flight. Albania 2 will deploy 1 hour 22 minutes 3 seconds into flight. So those are going to be about right in the middle of deployments. A number of these deployments will occur when we do not have ground station coverage because we are in a polar orbit. So we have less ground coverage, but they will confirm some of these throughout the deployment sequence. So we are going to be listening into that over the period of time there. But lots of different vehicles. We got a bunch of lemurs, ISI launches. We got a Bikeland, Space Bee, a bunch of block launches that are just space, like CubeSats and stuff. And then we have, of course, the orbiter vehicle. We got a Skycraft, X-27. We got some Umbras, new sats. We got EOS Sat 1. So lots of first satellites coming up over the next about 45 minutes. We're about 45 minutes from now will be complete all of our deployments for today. So 114 coming up. Can confirm it wasn't on the pad last week when I drove past. Oh, okay. Maybe it only was on the pad then for a couple days. No, I don't think the Russians stole it. Someone would have noticed. They must have rolled it out just for a day then. We thought it was on the pad a little bit longer. Asher's asking about Light Sail. I don't believe Light Sail's launching today, is it? There was a sail on Artemis 1. And if there is a light sail today, it might be included in one of these block ones. So we'll have to keep an eye. Chief, did you hear to Mars? Yes, I did. No, absolutely. I think like anyone, sending our thoughts and prayers for him for as quick of a speedy recovery as you can get from that type of situation. Football is a rough sport. It's a contact sport. That's always been known. Unfortunately, so many things had to go air quote right for that situation to happen, that it's extremely rare that this happens. So it's unfortunately a really freak accident that was documented and broadcasted globally, and to a really good player. So yeah, we wish him well, and of course our thoughts are with his family as they go through this time. Last I heard, he was in critical condition. I'm not a huge U.S. football fan. Don't follow it a lot. I don't have the time with all the rockets going, actually. But yeah, of course, hope that everything goes well. Obviously, there'll be conversations of what can happen in the future, but it was just a freak accident, unfortunately, that had to... If it had happened 1 millisecond earlier or later, the hit, he would have been most likely fine. That's how freak of an accident this is. Just like space. There are so many things that have to go right for things to happen, and there's actually a lot of things that have to go wrong for major failures to happen. There are things that aren't perfectly done on every Falcon 9 flight. There are, of course, parameters. But if enough things are just perfectly wrong, then you have a larger failure, unfortunately. So we'll have to we'll have to see. Hi, I've question 1. What is this? Can you explain, because I'm first here? Well, welcome. Here at the Launchpad, we cover everything space. So we bring you full live launch coverages of rockets from around the world. We bring you space news updates about everything happening in the space industry and interviews. SpaceX 49 minutes ago launched a rocket from Florida in the United States, and it has 114 satellites on board. And in just under 9 minutes, they are going to begin deploying those into orbit around our planet. So we're just waiting for that to begin so we can start watching that deployment occur. We do have one last burn of the engine, which is going to just finalize where those are going to be parked in orbit, and then we will begin deployment. Use time wisely. Absolutely. There's not enough time in the world. With this space industry, it's a 24/7 industry, which is awesome. It's really exciting to see space come online in the way that it is. So we're excited for that, and absolutely just means lots of coffee. Ian, has there been any updates on Orion since splashdown? Did the mission go as good as it seemed? Orion arrived back at Kennedy a few days ago. So now they will begin inspections, offloading data and resources, and there will be months of data review from this mission. So we should probably get an update. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something by the end of January on some of the stuff, but we'll have some updates, I'm sure, soon. And then they're going to announce the Artemis 2 crew here in the next few months. So we'll wait to see what happens there. As Jay said, when they start downloading data, that means that's when we get the 4K onboard videos. A lot of the cameras that we saw were filming in 4K, but they didn't broadcast it because of the downlink required. So we got it in like 720, maybe 1080. But that means we're going to have some incredible footage from around the moon. That footage we couldn't have dreamed of years ago. It's going to be some incredible footage. And we'll bring that to you either in a live stream and our articles on the website as well. Lee, thanks so much. Yeah, we're on that road to 250,000, 250,000. It's been a wild ride the last 2 years, but seems like a lot of you want us to hit that 250 by the end of 2023. So we'll see what happens. We'll set that as the goal, and we'll see what happens this year. It's gonna be a busy year. We got some big projects underway, so I think it's doable. Thanks, Lunar. Appreciate it. Ginger, when is the next Starlink launch and crewed launch? Well, I've got two answers for that. One, you can always see where our next launches are by heading to tlpnetwork.com/launches. That is on, I'll drop that in the chat there. I'll let you know when they are, though. Really interesting status right now with the launches for this year. All of January, except one, is all to be determined right now and unconfirmed. Which means we are all gray for January. Every single launch but one. There are 17 launches listed for this month. And the 18th is green, and that's a launch out of Japan. Everything else is to be determined. So we don't even have dates on them. But we do have a number of Starlinks expected to launch into the 5th shell, and possibly a couple into the 2nd shell this month. Next crewed missions shouldn't, other than depending what happens with the situation on the ISS, we shouldn't see another crew for a couple of months, just with the rotation on the space station. So a couple more months till another crew. Now we are coming up just about 2 minutes away from that next burn of the 2nd stage, as you can see on that kind of globe chart there. That 2nd stage engine should be beginning MVAC engine chill at this time, preparing for that 2-second burn to finalize its orbit. Oh, and correction for that launch calendar. There's also all the Chinese launches that aren't on there, and those normally just go very last minute. So we are keeping an eye on that. We'll be updating those. If you have iPhone, you can get our iOS app. It's a free app that you can download to have the launch calendar there. We're going to be having some updates to the website this month, and then some updates to the app coming out next month. And for our Android friends, we're working on it. We're trying. It's coming when it's ready, but it'll be there soon. Chief, what do the different shells mean? So think of the Earth like an onion. The core of the onion, which doesn't really have a core, but think about the center of the onion as the Earth, and then all of our satellites are put into all the layers of the onion. So you put satellites at different levels. So Starlink has 8 levels that they deploy all their satellites in, and they call them shells. So they'll deploy into those different shells. We should be coming up to about a minute before deployment here. We'll, of course, listen in to Mission Control once they begin their live feed to give us an update. We are over the middle of the ocean right now, so we may not have telemetry downlink there. We did have a telemetry hop, it looked like. So we may not have actual confirmation. Let's listen in.
Transporter 6 mission. We've had a great mission so far. We lifted off on time at 9:56 a.m. Eastern, recovered our first stage at landing zone 1, and completed the first of 2 second stage burns. Now we're coming up about 20 seconds away from a quick reignition of our Merlin vacuum engine. This burn will just be 2 seconds to circularize our orbit. So coming up, second engine start number 2.
Live look at that second stage. It means we do have a ground track. And then there's MVAC ignition and MVAC shutdown. That burn is now complete.
And there is successful startup, SES-2, as well as second engine cutoff number 2.
Nominal orbit insertion.
With that call out from Mission Control, we are in the expected orbit. As I just mentioned, you are watching the Transporter 6 mission. This is our 6th dedicated rideshare mission and SpaceX's first mission of 2023. The Falcon 9 lifted off at 9:56 a.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We successfully separated the stages, landed that first stage at landing zone 1 for our 161st recovery of an orbital class rocket, and we just completed the second of our 2 planned second stage burns. If you're not familiar with our transporter missions, they are dedicated rideshare flights. SpaceX is targeting at least 3 sun-synchronous orbit missions per year, in addition to various opportunities for a ride on our Starlink missions, which launch about once a week. The small sats can ride to space on our Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and in the not-too-distant future, Starship. Now we've got 114 spacecraft, including CubeSats, PicoSats, Microsats, and orbital transfer vehicles carrying spacecraft to be deployed at a later time in the mission. And as I mentioned earlier in the webcast, we are flying some payloads that are really cool to help monitor weather, environmental changes, greenhouse gases, satellites that improve communication for the Internet of Things, and satellites that will measure and investigate galactic cosmic rays and solar rays. Now, for the 114 spacecraft, there will be a total of 82 deployment events. Those will happen just past the T+58 minute mark, so just about a minute from now. And the payload deployments will last approximately 30 minutes. Now, unfortunately, we only have partial ground station coverage for the deployment sequence, and the ground stations are how we get our telemetry and these live views of the second stage. So we won't have coverage of all of the deployments visible today. But once we get ground station coverage back on the other side of that blackout, we'll expect to have telemetry and hear audio confirmation of the payload deploys that'll occur during that period. It's also worth mentioning that because these spacecraft are being deployed in groups in quick succession, we may not be able to confirm every deployment in real time. While you will hear most of the callouts by our mission control operators, we will try to provide updates for any that we don't hear real time by the end of the webcast. We do have a full list of the payloads on SpaceX.com if you'd like to follow along, but for now, we're going to listen in as the payload deployment sequence is about to begin.
Here we go. First deployment. 3, 2, 1.
Wait, Sat-1. Separation confirmed. ED Sat-2. Separation confirmed. Lemur 2. Immaculate. Separation confirmed. Lemur 2, Fuententaja 01, separation confirmed.
If you're just joining us, we are in the middle of the payload deployment sequence of 114 payloads on board Transporter 6. The sequence is going to take just over 30 minutes for all of the deployments. We have, luckily, some live views here of the first ones, as we won't, unfortunately, be able to see all of them today due to ground station coverage. Above me is a look live into one of the customer's mission control rooms. This is the Orbiter mission control room, where they're counting down towards deployment of their first spacecraft, the Orbiter SN1. That deployment not expected for another about 20 minutes from now.
Connected T1.2, separation confirmed. Gamma Alpha, separation confirmed. Bro 8, separation confirmed.
So far, we've heard all but one from the list in the sequence,
confirmed.
confirming the separations.
Some of them separation confirmed.
Some of them will get confirmations later on of.
Lemur 2, disclaimer, separation confirmed.
Lots of lemurs on board today.
Star Vibe, separation confirmed.
Lemur 2, Steve Albers, separation confirmed.
They must have heard you, Jay. They got 2 people to call it out, so they don't want to get a sore throat. If you're just joining us, though, make
ISI
sure
launch Cleos KSF3A, separation confirmed.
you engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, space briefing, or space news update. Keep listening into Mission Control as payload deployment continues. About 5 seconds to the next one.
Birkeland separation confirmed. Space B 156, 167, separation confirmed.
About a 30-second gap here until the next one. Another lemur that's going to deploy. You're just joining us. We're in the middle of payload deployment of 114 payloads from one rocket that just launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida just over an hour ago. The next deployment should be coming up here in the next 10 seconds.
Expected loss of signal, reef.
And there's that loss of signal. So we will possibly lose live views here. Oh, there's another one.
Lemur 2 and Molo, separation confirmed. ISI launch Cleos KSF-3B, separation confirmed. ISI launch Cleos KSF-3C, separation confirmed.
We got about a 90-second gap here until the next deployment will be confirmed. About a quarter-ish, fifth of the way through today's payload deployments. Some incredible views so far today of all these CubeSats, but as you can see, it's like a clown cart. Fairing open, there's all these vehicle launchers attached. All of these are from different providers. That's why they look all different, and some hold one CubeSat, some hold a couple back stacked, and then some hold a whole series of them. And then there's a few things like the orbiter craft, which the whole craft will separate, move around, and deploy CubeSats at a later point. Thanks so much, MJ, for that. It's a busy year again, indeed, and we appreciate your support. And it is 24/7, and we have some exciting 24/7 stuff coming up that we can't wait to share with you guys in the near future. Just the start of 24/7 coverage here on TLP. Should be coming up on that next deployment, about 5 seconds. There we go.
Lemur 2 Falari, separation confirmed. ISI launch Cleos KSF-3D, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed.
Qualities, expected loss of signal.
Space BD ISI launch Poly 10 from Kyiv, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed. Guardian Alpha, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed. Space BD Sony Sphere 1, separation confirmed. ISI launch Clyde Space NSL Sat 2, separation confirmed.
I actually heard a satellite name there that said from Kiev on it. So a satellite built in the Ukraine, it sounds like. Or at least components of it from the Ukraine. So need to hear that included in its name. Should have another deployment here momentarily. About 5 seconds.
ISI launch Sternula 1, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed. Flock 4Y, separation confirmed.
So see a great question in the chat, and I'll pause as they do the confirmations here. Steve is asking, how are these things controlled in orbit once deployed? So some of the
4Y, separation confirmed.
some of the larger ones will have little engines or thrusters on them, like the orbiter spacecraft, so it can move and change its inclination and altitude. Other ones are controlled by reaction wheels and things like that on board, just like James Webb. The Space Telescope, it's controlled by reaction wheels, and that's how it moves around. It doesn't fire engines. So there's a number of different ways they can actually control these on orbit. A lot of these are CubeSats, so they're like the size of a Kleenex box, so they're easier to maneuver and control. TJ, mechanical or pressurized release? Most of them are mechanical, from my understanding. Some of them may have pressurization, though. Draconic, glad you could make it. It's a really awesome launch to see. We got to do 2 or 3 of these a year, where there's 100.
4Y, separation confirmed.
Where there's 100+ payloads on board. Something 4 or 5 years ago wouldn't have ever thought would see, and now it's a regular thing. Should have another deployment here with the 9th flock in
Now this
about 10
time we've
seconds.
had confirmation of 33 out of the 35 deployments, but because the spacecraft on this mission are small sats, it can be sometimes difficult for us to confirm the deployments in real time. So we're going to confirm with our teams and provide an update a bit later on in the broadcast. Now, I mentioned it earlier, but we are entering into a telemetry blackout period. During this time, we're expecting to deploy an additional 20 payloads. This loss of signal will last until about the T+1 hour and 16-minute mark, so we'll be back just before then to get confirmation of the payload deployments that occur during the telemetry outage, as well as we'll be standing by for those final 27 deployments while we have telemetry back. For now, we're going to leave you with some space tunes, and we'll see you back around T+1 hour and 15 minutes.
And we'll stay live here, of course. We'll continue answering your questions, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad. And I will read through pending deployments as the clock continues on. While he was talking, we should have had the 10th Flock 4Y deployment. We should have seen the 11th Flock 4Y deployment. We should have had 12th Flock 4Y deployment. This is going to get repetitive. Pending 13th Flock 4Y deployment. Got a little bit of a pause here until the next one. They will confirm all these once we have telemetry back. And as they said, there were 2 CubeSats or payloads that were not confirmed deployed in that first batch that they are waiting to confirm. So we'll wait to hear the status of those at hopefully later in the broadcast. Moon, how do they slow down once deployed? Surely that affects their orbit. It does ever so slightly, but it's very minimal for it. So it's not an issue that they need to slow down for. 14th Flock 4Y should have just deployed. There's a lot of these, so they're going to be coming for a while. Another little pause here until the next one. '15th Block 4Y should have just deployed. Hey Michael, welcome. We're counting the payload deployments. 114 payloads on board today's SpaceX Falcon 9 mission. We've seen about 35 deployments so far, and we're continuing through that counting sequence. 16th Flock Y 4Y should have just deployed. We're currently in a no telemetry area, so that's why we do not have live views or live confirmations of these deployments. But in about 7 minutes, we should get that telemetry back, and they'll be able to confirm all of these deployments. 17th Flock 4Y should be deployed. 18th Flock 4Y should be deployed. '19th Flock 4Y should be deployed. Another little pause here until the next one. Yeah, really awesome, those early views, seeing all the little CubeSats come out. Always a great view to see. That's awesome, Draconic. Do they have launches every week? So this year, SpaceX is targeting 105 launches, and that's just one company. We cover everybody. SpaceX, NASA, ULA, some of Russia, other companies in the United States, Rocket Lab. We got stuff coming out of Europe and India, Japan. So lots of stuff. So we go live on average twice, 2+ times a week. For launch coverage, and then there's space news and a lot of other stuff. So if you enjoy space, you found the right place. It is going to be a very busy year. We were part of the Artemis 1 mission. We're still, again, just thank you so much to NASA and the Calypso demonstration team for including us as part of the Calypso demonstration on that record-breaking distant tech demo on board Orion. And then again, thank you to NASA and the U.S. Navy for inviting us to be one of about 10 people invited to welcome Orion home. We had our rocket chaser Kevin on site to welcome the USS Portland home, and we were there to see Orion as one of the first 10 people that were not on the Portland to get to see Orion when it came home. So really special to be there from launch, in orbit, and landing, and we can't wait for Artemis 2. Now, while I've been talking, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd Flock 4Ys should have been deployed. 26th should have just deployed. Sorry, 24th should have just deployed. And 25th should have just deployed. Callisto, not Calypso. Callisto. It was an early morning. Michael, this is Skylink. No, this is not Starlink. These are all private customer payloads. These are small CubeSats and small sats and microsats that are being deployed. None of these are Starlinks. Starlink missions will be exclusively say Starlink on the name. This mission is Transporter 6. Transporter 6 is the 6th dedicated rideshare mission that SpaceX has done, where they cram as many small sats on board and launch them together. So all of these satellites share the cost of one Falcon 9 mission, which makes it way more affordable for all of them. The 26th Flock 4Y should have just deployed, and the 27th Block 4Y should have just deployed. We will hopefully have acquisition of signal here coming up in about 3 minutes.
Mission, SpaceX's 6th dedicated small sat rideshare program. Now, we've had a successful liftoff at 9:56 a.m. Eastern Time from Space Launch Complex 40 in Florida. And so far, we've had 33 confirmed separation events. We're currently awaiting callouts for another 20, which occurred during a telemetry blackout where we didn't have access to ground station coverage. We're also getting ready for the final 27 spacecraft to deploy. For that full list of payloads we're flying today, head over to spacex.com. And also, really quickly, because these spacecraft are being deployed in groups in quick succession, we may not be able to confirm every deployment in real time, so we'll expect we may need a few extra minutes to confirm these final deployments. Let's listen in.
Should be acquiring the satellites here soon for telemetry. And there we go. You can see that speed just adjusted, which means we do have downlink again.
Acquisition of signal, forward.
Here we go. Prepare for long list of confirmations of deployment.
Separation of 20 payloads confirmed.
Or not, they'll just say that instead. We should be coming up here on the 28th and 29th. Flock 4Ys have deployed, and we should be coming up on the 30th deployment here in just a couple of seconds.
Flock 4Y, separation confirmed.
I think she forgot to unmute. That should have been the 29th. Sorry, that should have been the 30th.
Block 4Y, separation confirmed.
And that should be the 31st. About 5 more of these. 4 more of these. As Jay says in the chat, we should be about 10 minutes away from deployment of the launcher orbiter craft on its maiden mission. Above me is a live view into launcher mission control, and when we get closer, I will pull that up so we can see their team as they prepare for deployment of the launcher craft.
Flock 4Y, separation confirmed.
That was the 33rd. 34th will be
Block
coming up.
4Y, separation confirmed.
Three more of these flock 4Ys to deploy. About 30 seconds to the next one. Original asking, how are all those small sats controlled? So they all have satellites and antennas that downlink to their respective teams down on the surface. So they're all controlled via that. Or some of them aren't necessarily controlled and just take pictures or data and send the data back, but aren't actually necessarily like controlled, like a thing. Should have another deployment here in about 5 seconds.
Block 4Y, separation confirmed.
And that'll conclude the 36th Flock 4Y deployment.
Flock 4Y, separation confirmed.
There's confirmation of the last one. And now we'll get back into some other ones.
Separation confirmed.
There's the first. Let's listen. Continue to listen in.
Albania 1, separation confirmed.
See
Link Tower 4, separation confirmed.
multiple deployments there and a beautiful sunrise.
YAM 5, separation confirmed.
There's a large one deploying there. Got about 1 minute until the next one deploys here.
Acquisition signal, Pogo.
If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat. We'll answer those. We've still got about 10 minutes left of deployments, of the deployment sequence, and only about 15 or so satellites left. And we are 10 away from the deployment of the launcher orbiter SN1 craft. So I'm sure their teams are getting excited, but their mission is about to begin. I will pull up the mission control feed onto a larger screen here when we get closer to that deployment. There's that live view back of the second stage. Just getting a bit of sun glare on the camera at this time.
New set 34, separation confirmed. Albania 2, separation confirmed.
You can actually see that second stage is turning and aiming itself where it needs to be. Also does generally have a slow rotation while in orbit. The launcher satellite is a spacecraft that holds multiple satellites on it. So the launcher will separate from the second stage of Falcon, and then it will go off and deploy satellites later into set orbits that those customers have requested from the launcher company. So launcher is a customer of SpaceX, and then there are customers of launcher. Should have 2 rapid deployments here. None of these would be weather satellites, Ginger. These are all CubeSats and small sats. So these would tech demos, small data, cameras. I don't believe any of these would be...
First ISI satellite, separation confirmed.
I don't believe any of these would be a weather size satellite. Weather satellites are actually quite large, generally. But good question. Appreciate it. I'll see if our team can confirm that there are any on here. Five more deployments until launcher orbiter. And all of these missions are just as important. Launcher orbiter is just one that we're
separation confirmed.
a little bit excited about. It's another
Separation confirmed.
spacecraft coming online, and we're excited to have that live view in mission control of the launcher team as well. 2 minutes until orbiter deployment. Some great views today of the deployments here when we have had the ground station coverage. Dragon, that's the average if you divide it up by how many are on board, but it does vary based on size and weight. Orbiter is a lot larger than that small like exo box, so that does affect quite a bit as well on what the opportunity and cost would be. But they have actually lowered their costs as well. Another great view there. Great reminder of some of the views we had during Artemis 1.
Set 35, separation confirmed.
2 more until orbiter's deployment.
Ion SCV 007, Glorious Gratia, separation confirmed.
So you can see that was quite a large one deploying. We're 1 minute to orbiter deployment, so we're going to bring their team up on a larger screen here. .30 seconds until launcher orbiter SN1 deploys on its maiden flight. .10 seconds, here we go. That view on the right side of your screen is a live view into the launcher control room.
Ion SCV 008, Pierce Franciscus, separation confirmed.
The next one should be orbiter. That looked like it deploying there.
Launcher, orbiter SN1, space tug, separation confirmed.
And there we go. And you can see a live view in the mission control room, people jumping. Take this full screen for a second there. But maiden flight of orbiter has deployed. The team's very excited with that deployment of their first craft. We've got a few more still coming up here. nice to see some teams with some excitement these days as years of work have come. This is the first mission for Launcher in many years of work, and they are now beginning their mission to deploy their customers into space. We still got a few more here, so let's continue to listen in to mission control. 5 more deployments. Of course, congratulations to the launcher team, but also all of the teams of all of these payloads. 114 payloads on board today. A very exciting mission for SpaceX, but everyone on board.
ISI satellite, separation confirmed. Skycraft, separation confirmed.
So the one before Skycraft that he said, that was confirming a deployment earlier in the sequence. So at this time, I believe there's only one left that we have not had confirmation of, and we have 3 more deployments left for today.
Figure Ride 5, separation confirmed.
That was a big one. About 30 seconds. Oh, nope. One more, and then about 30 seconds to the last one.
Chimera Leo 1, separation confirmed.
And the last one should deploy here 1 minute, 31 minutes, 10 seconds into flight. So we've got about 2 minutes until confirmation of the very last satellite. Some great views there of the Earth. Currently, the second stage is tracking actually right over Canada. It flew right over top of, almost over top of us here at the TLP studio on its polar orbit here. Flight awaiting that final confirmation of deployment. Should be about 60 seconds away from that final deployment of Transporter 6. Is this Falcon 9 second stage spinning or flipping? So it kind of rotates on a few axes. It rotates on a few axes, generally speaking, when it's in orbit. But it does so according to the scheduled plans of what it should be doing at that time. All these deployments are scheduled based on the second stage's orientation and everything there. You can see again that live view into the mission control room of the launcher team as we wait for confirmation of the final payload deployment in about 10 seconds here. That second stage looking mighty empty compared to what it looked like 30 minutes ago. Should have that last deployment any second. And we may or may not be able to see it depending what side it's on. There we go.
Dragonfly Aerospace, EOS Sat 1, separation confirmed.
As you may have noticed, we were able to confirm 77 of the 82 deployments Now, because the spacecraft on this mission are small sats and because some of them deploy in close proximity to another, it can be difficult for us to confirm the deployments in real time. I've heard from our teams that we likely won't be able to make confirmations in the next few minutes, so we're going to end our live broadcast here, but we'll provide an update on those final confirmations via our social media platforms as soon as we receive them.
SpaceX begins to wrap up their live feed. Another fantastic mission here coming to an end. We're going to take another live look into the launcher mission control room as their teams begin to work with their vehicle, now having had successful launch of that orbiter craft. We've been seeing their team slowly bring it online as they get ready to work with their customers' payloads. First time they have deployed the orbiter, but as we heard there, 77 of 82 deployments confirmed, and we've got a few more deployments that they will confirm later on. Now, that does not mean there was any issues with them. It just means at that time we haven't had a confirmed sequence, a light, something, so they're working to confirm that in other ways, and then they will do so accordingly. But Transporter 6 officially in the history books, 114 payloads launched into orbit, but there was 82, I believe he said, deployment sequences. So some launched multiple at one time. That's why you don't have 114 deployments there. But another great mission coming to an end. If it's your first time here, though, welcome here at the Launchpad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And here at TLP, we bring you full live launch coverage of every launch, not only SpaceX, but all of them around the world. We're bringing you space news updates. We got a couple new live shows we're going to be rolling out in the near future. And a lot more. If you want to stay up to date on everything space and your upcoming launch schedule, head over to tlpnetwork.com/launches. That's where you can stay up to date on all upcoming launches and whether we will have live broadcasts for them or not. You also head over to tlpnetwork.com/news. That's where you can stay up to date on all of your space news as stories develop. And if you're interested in possibly joining our team, we are currently onboarding some new writers and contributors. So if you're interested in possibly becoming part of the Launchpad crew, definitely take a moment, check that out, fill out a quick application, and we will reach out to you shortly with some opportunities there. We're an amazing volunteer team around the world bringing you the best possible coverage of every space that we can, credited with NASA, SpaceX, ESA, CSA, and others, and we can't wait for some of the things that are in store for this year. If you haven't yet, follow us over on Twitter at TLPN official or on there. That's where you can stay up to date with our live news as well, and join us over on the Discord. TLP's Discord is free and it's open to the public, and you are welcome to join us in there and be part of our awesome space community. But if you like what we do and you'd like to help us continue to do more of this and bring you live coverage from in the field, you can consider becoming a member, and that'll get you behind the scenes access, early video updates, script updates, exclusive interviews early. You got merch options, tons of benefits depending on your level of crew membership that you do, which all goes right back into supporting TLP and our mission. I've yet to take a salary. None of our team has either, and we're putting this all into bringing you that best possible coverage that we can, which involves flying a lot of places, so we appreciate your guys' support. We're going to be doing live reports out of the UK this year, as of course in the United States as well, and possibly some other countries, so stay tuned for that. But the first launch of 2023 is in the books. Many more to come. Over 100 launches scheduled this year for SpaceX, and over 100 other launches from other companies, so it's going to be a busy year. We're going to see you multiple times a week here for our full live launch coverage, and of course our space news and live shows. But that's going to do it for us here today from TLP Network's main studio here in Edmonton, Canada. This is Zach signing off. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye, and we wish you a Happy New Year.